All right, so I hope you all enjoyed a little bit of music there to get you pumped. So, welcome to the Sakaiger Den session. I'm going to turn it over to our MC for today, Josh Wilson.
Hey gang, it's 4:10, so it's time to get started. This will be an interesting experiment / proof of concept. So thank you to our 4 sets of pitchers for being willing to play games in the Sakaiger Den today. So I want to give you a little bit of information about the rules of the road, and then let's get to it. So this is a 30-minute session, not a 35-minute session. So we'll have to be quick and focused. So why are we here? We have $10,000 to spend. It is burning a hole in Wilma's pocket. So we need to figure out how best to spend that on a worthy project to improve Sakai. So our job here today is to take stock of the 4 projects that are being presented and think about which ones we think would be most worthy. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to say a few words of introduction. I'm doing that right now. Then we'll have 4 pitches, each of which will be 4 minutes or less. I will keep time. And then we're going to have some time for questions and or advocacy. So with any luck, we'll have about 10 minutes after the pitches are done for you guys to ask clarifying questions of any of the presenters, so that you can make sure that you understand the intent of the project, the approach of the project, anything else that you want to understand. And then if there's time after the questions are done, I'll open up the floor so that folks can advocate for one project or another. So let's stick to positive advocacy, please. So if you have something great to say and you want to push one of the projects, that'll be your time to do it, assuming we have time at the end of the session. So it's important to note no voting will go on today. We realize that in 30 minutes, there was no way that could be done. So here's what will happen. We'll follow on this session in the spirit of American Idol or So You Think You Can Dance. We'll post the video from this session tomorrow morning. So this will be the first video from the virtual conference that gets posted. And the community will receive an email and a link to a voting form once the video has been posted, so that you guys who are in this session can vote. Anyone who didn't make it can watch the video and vote. You'll have 24 hours for voting. So 24 hours from the time we send the email, we'll turn the voting off. And so that'll be the end of the community voting phase. And a little bit later on this month, there will be a judges panel that Wilma will convene. They will vote using the exact same rubric that you will. And then there will be a decision rendered, and we'll let everyone know. So in general, the community voting will be about 40% of the overall decision, and the judges voting will be about 60% of the overall decision. So this is the first time we've done this. We are trying our best to make this fair and clear and think through all the angles. So if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, in the spirit of a work in progress, please feel free to pass them along. The American College Electoral College method. No, it'll be slightly better, but possibly not much. Thank you, Laura. All right, so I wanted to share with you the rubric that we're going to use for both the community voting and the judges voting. So the rubric is this, and this one is inspired by some rubrics that I gathered from hack events, coding events, 3D printing events. I tried to adapt it with some particular context. So here's how we'll judge the projects that get pitched. Is the problem an important one? That gets 20 total points. Does it solve the problem? Does the solution solve the problem? Another 20 points there. Is it well thought through? Is it clearly described? Is it innovative? 10 each for each of those 3. Is it a differentiator for Sakai? From my chair on the marketing committee, that's always really important to me. So how can we establish areas of leadership for Sakai when compared to other LMSs? So the question of whether a project makes for a differentiator is something that's important, and it's weighted accordingly. Would institutions adopt it? 10 points for that as well. So that's the rubric. Tomorrow you'll receive a link to a web form, which will be based on this rubric that you can use for your voting. So here are the 4 projects that are going to be pitched this afternoon. So First up is going to be the Auto Groups Wizard. That's going to be pitched by John Buckingham and Tiffany Stull. Second will be a Slack and Instagram-inspired Sakai. That's going to be pitched by Michael Greene. Third is Where is That Resource? To be pitched by Terry Golightly. And last is Sakai and Credly to be pitched by Julian Sharp. So let me get out my phone. Let me set the 4-minute timer. Let me get John and Tiffany's slides up, and then once they're up, their 4 minutes will begin. So I'm going to turn off screen sharing on my slides. I'm going to turn on screen sharing on their slides. All right, we have screen sharing, we have slides, 4 minutes. John and Tiffany, are you guys ready to go?
I wanted to ask real quick, we also plan on showing our prototype, and I was actually planning on going through that myself. So
yeah.
Okay, so I'll be glad to, why don't you get that queued up and I'll turn off the screen sharing when you hit that point.
Okay.
Or I can turn it off now. I mean, the challenge was to not have lots of switchover in a short period of time. So if you guys are ready to go, I can turn off the share and you guys can take it. It's up to you.
Okay. I guess I'll ask you to start sharing when I guess we're ready to start the prototype.
Okay. All right. That is fine. All right. So okay. 4 minutes. Your time starts now.
Okay. So we're going to talk about improving the auto groups feature. Next slide. So why do we need auto groups? Instructors incorporate groups into their classes for many reasons. As class sizes increase, instructors are more and more reliant on automation. And there's currently this auto groups functionality, but it puts a number of time, process, and expectation barriers in front of instructors. Next slide, please. The current functionality suffers from a number of problems. First, there's a page layout and use of checkboxes and confusing language on the page that leads them to expect they're going to get something different than they do. And there's no automatic way during the creation process to allow group members to see members of their own group. Next. The functionality also can't respect roles and rosters at the same time. So if you have a large class with multiple rosters, you can't choose to put students from the same roster in groups together. You just have to get all students in the class mixed randomly. Similarly, it doesn't allow you to mix students or users who have different roles. So for example, if you have waitlisted students and students, you would have to go into each group after creating them and add one of those roles members to those groups. And now for the prototype. Next slide.
Yeah, could I request share? Excellent, thank you. All right, so as you can see here, we have our prototype that we wanted to display with you all real quickly. We created this prototype using Adobe XD. And so you're going to see here, I'm going to click on Manage Groups, and then I'm going to click on Auto Groups. And right here, you're actually going to see the new kind of UI wizard that we have thought very, very long about and designed to incorporate a lot more transparency, setting up expectations with faculty so they know exactly what they're getting, and also so that they are aware of where they are throughout every stage of this process. So in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. You'll see here I've got steps that very, very clearly show me where I'm at. And then I've got some language here. So in this case, let's start with the first step. Please select the which site roles to include in the groups you are creating. In this case, I want waitlisted students and students. Then it's going to take me to step 2, where I've got a nice box here telling me exactly what I just did in step 1. And it's asking me here now, you now have the option to draw group members from specific sections and rosters. Would you like to do this? In this case, yes. And in this case, I want to select roster 1 and roster 2, and I'm going to click continue. And then here, again, we have a very, very clear outline of everything that I've done thus far up to this point. And now, similar to the current UI, I'm going to select that I want a specific team for the group title, and I want to specify a number of groups that I want to create here, and I'm going to click continue. And then you're going to see now that I'm on the preview page. And so here, I can very, very clearly see exactly what I'm getting with each of these. And so this is a great way for me to get confirmation of exactly everything that I just chose. We've also incorporated a nice feature here for allowing members to see who else is a member of their group. This is currently not a feature right now. So if I had, say, 10 groups that I just created and I want each of those groups to allow students to see members of their own group, I would have to go
remaining.
I would have to go into each of the groups manually and configure that property. So this very, very clearly gives me that option to do so. Again, I've got a very, very nice preview here, and then I'm going to click Save. And then right here at the very end, I can see all of the groups that I just created. I've walked through the entire process. It was very, very clear. It had very, very clear language. And so this is kind of the outline and the vision that we've established. And so that is everything. And then we have a final slide indicating some resources to see some more information about this project. And I think I want to hand this back off to you, Josh.
All right. Thanks, guys. That was great. So that's number one. So we're going to move now to the second pitch, which is going to be Michael Greene talking about a Slack and Instagram influence Sakai. So, Michael, do you want to share your sketch cloud, or shall I do it?
I was planning to share and demo myself.
Go for it. You're on.
Okay, I'm just trying to find you to promote you in the list. So, are you in as yourself? Or are you in as?
I'm in as myself.
Okay.
And I did paste the link in the chat if folks just want to pull it up on their own machine.
Okay, I just promoted you, so you should be good now.
Your time starts now.
There we go. Cool. All right. Hopefully, folks could see that window coming through. So hi, I'm Michael. I lead the LTS team at Duke. In my past life, I was a web designer, and so I used the Duke Sakai skins as kind of a creative outlet back into that work. My goal for today is My goal for today is to start a conversation and get folks in the mood to entertain drastic UI redesign ideas. If you attended the roadmap session, you might have seen that on the roadmap for a couple versions from now. And so I'm not necessarily pitching that this is the specific particular idea that we should implement. So as a designer, I'll start with these desktop ones. I personally just like where the favorites bar sits in the UI and kind of what it does there. So I started from a place of what would I do with the favorites bar? And I'm in Slack all day, and I like the way that they do their favorites bar. And I'm seeing more of this kind of 3-column layout in apps. And so I said, well, yeah, let's mock that up with Sakai. And so that's what you're seeing in all 3 of these desktop mockups. That's across the board. And then the tools are still next to that. Now, these mockups in the center, this is stuff that Wilma and others have been working on for the Lessons 2.0, so I don't take any credit from that. I'll move to this second one. This is very similar, but is kind of just a little bit lighter, more Google all-white inspired in the color scheme. And then adding some other things down here, like what would it be if we could hook into the chat tool and have direct messages right in the tool sidebar, and you could, that might be interesting. Or if we added something in Lessons about progress, and you could kind of understand what you have left to do this week, and that was kind of at a glance, kind of. And then skipping over here to this third desktop mockup, the only real difference here is getting back the blue, the two-tone, kind of adding some gray in, but also moving the site's kind of waffle over here so that it's kind of next to the site name, so that I would assume a user might think to click on the site name or click here and expect to see that type of content versus where it's currently placed in the UI. All right, next is mobile, right? So a mobile first strategy, thinking about something that would work both in mobile and desktop. And very common patterns in mobile, right, is, you know, you swipe from either edge or you use icons to pull in panels from the edge, and you have an action bar in the bottom. And so that's what these mock-ups are illustrating, those same screens with an action bar at the bottom. And if I zoom out, you may notice that these 5 things are the same as the kind of 5 categories of things on this sidebar. And then these screens illustrate what happens if you would swipe from the left edge or hit the hamburger icon. And so much of this is Slack, but the one major thing I pulled in from Instagram is I kind of like, thank you, I liked how they kind of had the stories at the top that you could, you know, thumb and are scrollable horizontally. And so that's how this favorite sites would work. So it could naturally, in a mobile UI, you'd have more favorite sites. You may have more favorite sites, so you could scroll across those. If you use the Slack mobile app, there's actually 3 columns in that left pane, and so this iconography indicates that you're on one of those 3. And that's just the right pane. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Michael. So that is 2 of our 3 pitches. Our third pitch is, where is that resource? And that's going to be pitched by Terry Golightly. So, Terry, I will. I have your slides in PDF, and I've got them shared now, so you can just let me know when to switch from each one. So let's see. Is Terry promoted to panelist?
Yep,
so
I just promoted her. So
right.
Terry, you should be able to unmute and share if you need to.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't know you couldn't. Okay. As an instructional designer that goes through courses in a management sort of way, I go through a lot of resources, validating them and upgrading them. And there are various ways of organizing resources, and some are more helpful than others. I often find that obsolete and unused resources are there after I've already fixed them up. And so there are 2 pieces of information I would like to add to resources to help manage, validate, and update current courses. Please slide. This is the resources page we know and love. This one looks like it's somewhat organized by week, but as you scroll down the page, next slide, you can see that organization kind of falls apart. And not every item is filed into a folder. It's impossible to know whether a file is even still in use unless you hunt it down in lessons, assignments, tests and quizzes, whatever. And what's more, you can't even tell who might have last updated it. If I know, for instance, that I last updated it, it has half a chance of being accessible. The next slide, please. The first change I would like to see is an extra column that shows where the resource is located within the course, and I've titled that column Pages. The value of this column is that you would be able to tell immediately whether the item is being used in the course and go to the place to make any modifications in the context of where that resource is being used. Now, the developers at Longsight have told me this change would be very complicated because there are so many places that can be linked. But if we limit the parameters, this might be a little bit easier to accomplish. The value of this change is that this way is going to make it easier to be sure that you're not dealing with a bunch of obsolete material for those people who are trying to keep courses updated and streamlined. The other change that would be helpful is another column modified by, so you can see who was the last one who modified. The date shows, but not the person. So it may be, if you scroll down one more time, that maybe Wile E. Coyote was a little malicious and made some changes that shouldn't have been made, and those would be easy to track by what you see up there. Now, these 2 columns, next slide, please. These 2 columns provide real value to course developers by providing important information on where the resource is located within the course and who last modified that resource. They help to validate the resource's currency, its relevance, and helps identify what is obsolete and can be deleted. That helps to make the course more valid and more streamlined. The challenges for the developers might take a little creative thinking, but by thinking outside of the box, maybe limiting some parameters, other creativity, I think this could be a valuable modification to the resources tool. That's it.
All right, and you have 40 seconds to spare. Impressive.
This has been a great pain point for me for a long time, and I know that some things are a lot more romantic, like you know, something that changes the whole look of everything, but there hasn't been a real functional change to resources. I've been doing this since 2006, and resources looks much the same as it looked back in 2006, but this would make a difference in the functionality of the tool, and for those who have to get their hands down in the dirt and make things work, I think this would be a really valuable assist.
All right, thanks, Terry. So last up is Julian Sharp, who's going to talk to us about Sakai and Credly. So Julian, have you been promoted to panelist so that you can speak and share?
I just promoted her.
All right. So Julian,
I think I'm here. Hello?
Yep, you are here.
Okay.
Do you have something you want to share? Do you have slides or anything similar?
I don't. I didn't do slides thinking that I only had 4 minutes to talk and that I could just kind of talk through our problem
All right.
without
You're
a
just going to tell
slide.
us a story.
I am going to tell you a story.
All right, your time starts now.
Wonderful. So what we found at Marist is that the interest in digital credentials keeps growing, not only with just our faculty, but also within our students. We're looking at doing more of a competency-based education system. Our faculty are interested in both earning digital badges and also issuing digital badges. And we were looking at a variety of things. We settled on Credly, Acclaim, as our platform to use to do digital badges. And since we started, I'm trying to think of when we started them about a year ago. We have 47 different digital credentials within Credly. Right now, there is no integration between Credly and Sakai. And so what we're looking for is something that integrates Credly with the gradebook so that faculty would have an easier time designing, creating, and issuing digital credentials. What I'm hearing across campus is that, you know, XYZ learning management system has an integration. This particular learning management system has an integration, but Sakai doesn't seem to. And we've done some investigation on our own to take a look at what it would take to build an API connection. And it's not undoable. However, with the constraints that Marist faces right now, as far as staffing goes, we don't have the staff to do it completely ourselves. So I am pitching it here, hoping that maybe another group would be interested in working with us to create something, or even multiple groups would be interested in working with us to create something so that we and our faculty would have an easier time issuing digital credentials. That's my pitch.
All right, thanks, Julian.
Sure.
And you had 1 minute and 56 seconds left. That's land speed record. So nice job.
I can pitch pretty quickly. Elevator pitches.
It was good. It was good. All right. So thank you to our presenters. So I want to move on to the next stage here, which is time for questions from the floor and time for advocacy. So let's start with questions. So if you have a question for any of the presenters about any of the pitches, please put it in the chat, and one of the moderators will surface that. All right, we've got a clarifying question for Michael. Where do the sites go in the favorites? It looks like icons only.
That is correct. In these mock-ups, it's icons only, which does present some challenges. Slack overcomes these with just an abbreviated acronym, and it would further we don't have many users using the site icon currently, so I think it would encourage more use of that to distinguish your site.
So there's a second question for Michael, which is, are you advocating for this UI UX improvements to happen for Sakai 21?
I'm advocating that UI UX improvements happen in Sakai 21. Not necessarily these. I like these ideas, but they may not be the best for Sakai.
All right, so Dave Evelyn asks, are these pitches reachable within the 10K ceiling? I don't think we know that yet.
Yeah, that would probably take a little more discovery. But what we are anticipating is if it's a bigger project and it goes over the 10K mark, that this would at least get it started, and then maybe some additional funding could be, allocated or generated, one of the two. And if it's a smaller project that comes in under 10K, then that's great, we can get it done, but that it would at least be a starting point.
I think our biggest job here is to determine the relative worthiness of the project so we can prioritize. Let's see, so Charles, you ask a question for Terry. What tools would you emphasize to surface in the where it's used column aside from lessons?
I think the priority would go towards the big four. You've got lessons, forums, tests and quizzes, and assignments. And that's where I would start, because of course you can link to resources from just about any of the weird one-off types tools that are out there. And that's part of the complication of the question that I asked Longsight, and they came back, oh, that would just, that's a spider web kind of a question. So, but I think those big four, most resources would be linked to one of those four.
All right, so a comment from Laura Sierra, who advocates for UI changes, so noted. Adrian asks, Michael, do you see your changes as being achievable with HTML5, CSS, or as a mobile application?
I don't think a mobile app is required. It would take template changes, not just CSS, but I think it's doable with HTML and CSS, yeah.
All right, Dave Evelyn asked all the panelists, do any of these improvements target students as a primary recipient of the change?
The Credly integration would. We are looking to be able to issue digital credentials to students as an availability for them to put on their resume and continue on to get a job.
Any others that would target students? All right, Maris Digital Education asks, would you expect a particular lessons page? My guess is that's a question for Terry.
It would be helpful, like I illustrated it, if it said week 1 or that kind of thing, so that you could go to that page and make whatever contextual changes needed to be made for that assignment or for that resource, I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, it would at least narrow it down if you knew it was in one of the 15 or 16 lessons that you've got in that course, but it would be helpful if you could narrow it down specifically.
So we've got about 2 minutes remaining before we have to break and get us all to the wrap up for the day. So let's see how many more questions we can tackle. Sean asks, Julian, are you looking for just issuing badges, or do you intend the integration to manage the creation of new badges?
That's a kind of a loaded question, an interesting question, I should say, because it depends on what you mean by creation of new badges. I don't think that you could create the badge design-wise within Sakai or within any learning management system. I think that has to be done externally with a Adobe Illustrator or some type of creation, graphic design type platform. I'm looking for it to be able to issue the badges and to have them displayed somewhere within the profile. And I see hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Whoops, sorry,
Okay.
I was talking away muted, so yeah.
No problem. And I saw another one about whether or not we would do an open badges integration versus a specific vendor, and I'd be completely open to that. We didn't have the capability of going with an open source platform because of our time constraints. We had a collaboration with IBM where we had to get some things up and issued in a very quick amount of time. So I couldn't go with an open source platform then, but I'd be absolutely open to moving to an open source platform.
So it is 4:40. I want to be mindful of our time. 4:40 is when we had intended to end the Sakaiger Den, so we can all get us to the wrap-up session that starts in 5 minutes, I believe. So I just want to say a thanks to our panelists, our presenters. So thanks to John and Tiffany, thanks to Michael, thanks to Terry, thanks to Julian, thanks to 70 some odd of you guys for being here, which is phenomenal for 4:40 p.m. Eastern on a Wednesday afternoon. So these are really, really interesting projects, and this is a great first Sakaiger's Den. I'm really psyched. So the judges will convene soon, and we'll have information about that. The community voting will begin tomorrow. There'll be an email announcing the beginning, and that's when the video will also be up so that folks who didn't attend the session can watch it and they also can vote. So thanks all for your time and your thoughtful comments this afternoon. We're going to save the chat and make sure that the questions and comments get to the right people. So we'll see you all at the next session. Thank you.
Anybody bite?
We shall see.